Anne here, and this is More Than a Love Interest, the show where we talk about the arcs of female characters in film. Today, we are talking about one of the best Disney princesses, Mulan. First, we'll talk about how she compares to the other ladies, then her character arc, and wrap up by getting into the, gender politics. Sounds fun.
Let's get down to business.
So, as always, let's start this off by refuting some of the criticism aimed at Mulan. Nothing here. Oh, no, it's about the new movie. Okay, so apparently, no one has anything bad to say about Mulan. What a refreshing change.
The bravest of us all!
You're king of the mountain!
Yes!
Instead, let's get into why that is. Now, this series is pretty much based on discussing the moral panic people have around princesses, that they're bad role models or whatever. So here, I want to look at why perhaps those people are not worried about Mulan in the same way. First, on the surface level, she's more proactive than the other princesses. She runs off to join the army.
My little baby off to destroy people.
But I don't think that's fair. Even Cinderella defied her family to take control of her fate, and that's pretty standard by now. So I don't think that's a real reason to set her apart. Another surface level is that she throws off the constraints on her gender. But again, this is not really uncommon. Plenty of the princesses are rejecting the expectations placed on them by society or their own families, or both. Ariel throws off the constraints of her species, but she doesn't get the free pass that Mulan does. Probably because if you are personally feeling especially constrained by your gender role, you may really appreciate Mulan for that. And not to psychoanalyze the opinion havers on princesses, but I certainly feel an undercurrent of discomfort with femininity, which might account for why Mulan doesn't get the same clickbait article treatment that the more traditionally feminine princesses do.
Now, pour the tea.
But I think both of those reasons are boring and could come from reading a Wikipedia article about Mulan as much as from actually watching the film. So while they cannot really be discounted as reasons people don't complain about Mulan, I would rather get into what the movie itself actually does to build on its predecessors.
That's better, much better. Let's go.
So for this section, I'm going to break down how the film addresses and improves upon three things that are sort of the standard Disney princess formula: the love interest, the cute sidekicks / magical intervention, and the conflict with her parents.
Please help her.
Now, this relationship is pretty unique. There is, of course, the fact that Shang believes her to be Ping, initially the weirdest dude he's ever met,
The boy's an absolute lunatic.
and then actually good soldier.
From now on, you have my trust.
And the reveal that she is a woman is confusing and strange for him, understandably. But from Mulan's perspective, just look at that face. She is on board right away, and who wouldn't be? Anyway, one of the main criticisms for princesses is, of course, that they just fall in love at first sight, which I think is a silly criticism to have. I'm not saying I always enjoy insta-love. I prefer endless pining. But these movies are short, and plenty of other developments are hand-waved. For example, you probably accept that this person will be the villain pretty much on sight, don't you? If you want complex love stories, or any kind of stories, there are whole genres dedicated to that. These are simple tales for children, which are able to resonate because of their simplicity. But I'll save that rant for another video because it doesn't apply here. Mulan is into Shang pretty quickly. They develop their relationship naturally, if maybe one-sidedly, and then it culminates when he comes over for dinner. They don't kiss or anything.
You forgot your helmet. Well, actually, it's your helmet, isn't it?
So the first big change to the formula is that her love interest is more realistic. They get to know each other and then fall in love. If they do it all, they're interested in each other, certainly. But it doesn't go beyond that in this movie.
You fight good.
You don't meet a girl like that every dynasty.
Which I guess is what people wanted. I mean, Beauty and the Beast is remembered very fondly because both characters grew and changed throughout the movie. And I would say that happens here as well. I'll get more into Shang in the final section, but he certainly changes his views as a result of knowing Mulan.
You are the craziest man I've ever met. And for that, I owe you my life.
And that means the love story serves to develop both characters. They learn from each other and grow as people, something that not many of the previous princess movies did, which makes that improvement number 1.
The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all.
All right, on to improvement number 2. You know how Disney princesses have cute animal sidekicks? It's lampshaded now, of course, but initially it was meant to demonstrate her innate goodness. Like Snow White, Aurora, Cinderella, they all have these little friends to show their compassionate side. Then the Renaissance princesses have sidekicks for more utilitarian reasons, to give her someone to confide in or to alleviate the tension with their cute shenanigans, and they start to be part of the conflict of the plot. Sebastian is integral to Ariel's issues with her father. The enchanted castle denizens are obviously related to the Beast's whole thing. Abu and Iago are pretty essential to the plot.
Except you, Raja.
And Percy and Miko are, clumsily, representative of the overall conflict in their movie. Anyway, similarly, all of the princesses have some kind of magical intervention to help them through things. There's actually a lot more variety here. It's not even uniform when in the story they get help. But it's another tenet of the genre. And obviously I'm putting these together because for Mulan, they are the same. Mushu is both her magical intervention and her sidekick. So that does make him unique. But it is not necessarily an improvement. Since he has both roles, there could be many moments in which he would be present and able to provide Mulan with magical fixes as she encounters obstacles. Except he doesn't. So what really sets Mulan apart is that she does not have a magical intervention. Mushu is magical, of course.
Did I hear someone ask for a miracle?
But what does he do that actually helps her? Not to diminish him as a character, but he bites this one guy and he lights some things on fire for her. And neither of those are exactly magic, not in the way that these stories usually go.
That's it. I'll make Mulan a war hero and they'll be begging me to come back to work.
So what replaces those magical interventions when Mulan is in a fix? Well, her own ingenuity, something we are shown is a skill of hers from literally the first scene, and then several times afterward. Thus, improvement number 2 is that while the magic is certainly not gone from the story, it does not remove Mulan's agency. Instead of it being something that gives her an easy out for a difficult challenge or whatever, Mulan has to come up with a more down-to-earth solution to the problems she faces. The impression to the audience then is that she is more independent and resourceful than the previous princesses. Though I would say that sells them short. It has more to do with the story structure than the characters themselves. But there is one other aspect that sets Mushu as a character apart from his previous iterations. Unlike the other princesses, Mulan does not have to take care of him. It's quite the opposite. He makes sure she has what she needs and does not require anything of her, which is a lovely change, honestly. I don't want to get too far into it, but the princesses have almost always been shown as caretakers with no one nurturing them in any way, except arguably Sebastian, and I do take issue with that, especially when princesses have to look after grown-ass adult men in their lives. But that's another video. Back to the positives. Mushu is actively involved in making sure Mulan has everything she needs. More than that, though, he reflects her own traits back at her. I wouldn't say they have everything in common, but there is one very important thing that they do. Both are in the same situation of trying to fake their way through something that they are deemed unable to do by the rules of society.
The truth is, we're both frauds. Your ancestors never sent me. They don't even like me.
Which furthers the themes of the story and bonds them together in a way the other ones did not.
We started this thing together, and that's how we'll finish it.
I mean, I guess Pocahontas tried, but you can check out my thoughts on that here. Thus, the changes made to the magical intervention and the cute sidekicks have increased Mulan's agency and made her more integral to the story.
So what's the plan?
Mushu.
Way ahead of you, sister. Come on, Cookie.
Which brings me to improvement number 3, and I think it's pretty substantial even if it takes very little screen time. Mulan's conflict is not with her family. It affects her family, of course, and she does leave them early on in the story, but they are all loving and supportive. Her father makes it clear that he values her as a person, not just as a daughter, in nearly all of his scenes. Similarly, her mother and grandmother are doing their best to help her be successful in life, and importantly, do not shame her for her inability to fit in at the beginning, or for leaving. They're just worried about her. Contrast how her grandmother prepares for the matchmaking session.
I should have prayed to the ancestors for luck.
How lucky can they be? They're dead.
To how she reacts to Mulan going to war, possibly to her death.
Ancestors, hear our prayer. Watch over Mulan.
Mulan's family knows her, loves her, and are just trying to do their best for her.
This one's late. It will be the most beautiful of all.
Let's take a look at the other familial relationships. We got some evil stepmothers, some bumbling parents who might not be evil but are not really helpful to the princess, and then some real conflict with fathers. So yeah, none of the other princesses are supported in the same way that Mulan is. Thus, improvement number 3 is that Mulan is the only one with a family who are on her side no matter what she does. And Mushu and Cricky are extensions of that. They are there to look after her in her family's absence.
So listen to your teacher and no fighting. Play nice with the other kids, unless, of course, one of the other kids want to fight. Then you have to kick the other kid's butt.
All right, overall, yeah, she does join the army and throw off those gender roles. But thinking that is what makes her special ignores the rest of what I think are really notable improvements. Her love interest develops naturally, her family is loving and supportive, and her sidekick allows her to remain the protagonist with agency while nurturing her. These combine to create an environment that allows the princess to really shine as a well-defined character. So let's get into how that affects her character arc. Alright, for our next section, let's talk about Mulan's character arc. We are using Maureen Murdoch's Heroine's Journey, as usual, and this is going to be pretty fun because of how literal a lot of it is. So let's dive right in. The first step on the journey is for the heroine to separate from the feminine. Unusually, we are shown right away that Mulan does not actually fit in here. Sure, she has a loving and supportive family, but they already know that she does not fit into the expected role, and her character song is about how she does not see herself reflected here.
Never pass for a perfect bride.
Unlike many princesses who we meet already separated and trying to get back to something, we spend some time with Mulan in the world where she does not belong currently, and she separates very obviously by cross-dressing.
No! Your great-granddaughter had to be a cross-dresser!
The second step is for the heroine to gain some masculine allies in her new role in life. I'm gonna be real here, the fact that the heroine's new friends are almost always men is something I sort of consider an indictment of the film industry. We couldn't possibly have more than one girl in something, could we?
That's what I said! A girl worth fighting for!
Anyway, but here it actually makes sense. Mulan is impersonating a man, and obviously would need some men to help her out. Mushu is somewhat helpful in very funny ways.
Punch him is how men say hello.
Her 3 new friends turn out to be more so during the subsequent events. Shang fits this role as well, I believe, though we'll get more into that. In any case, she solidly has some masculine allies to support her in her foray into the man's world.
Beautiful, isn't it?
They're disgusting.
No, they're men.
The third step is the road of trials. For Mulan, it's pretty much the montage during this song.
I'll make a
I'll talk more about this specifically in the next section, but here are all the ways her masculine allies are helping her. First, it is less than friendly, of course, but then they start working together and she starts being successful. More successful, obviously, than she was in the first scenes. The fourth step is the illusion of success, where the heroine sort of reaches a pinnacle with her masculine allies before she finds that they cannot be her only recourse. And that's really here where she causes the avalanche. A couple things about this scene. First, I just want to point out that she does not succeed here because she has become male soldier extraordinaire. She and her friends do not perform some perfect maneuver that they've been training to do. The entire army has already failed. This little squadron can only hope for one thing.
Prepare to fight. If we die with honor.
So even though we have seen Mulan proving how effective she is during training, this scene is what sets her apart, even before the others figure out what she really is. Because we saw Mulan do this in the beginning, and it's coming back here. Mulan's defining character trait has nothing to do with her gender, or whichever one she's trying to fit into. It's her intelligence. That's why she figured out the discipline and strength thing, and that's why she is able to destroy the majority of the Hun army. Not because she has perfected being manly and tough, but because she is special on her own. However, this victory is an illusion. This is not the triumphant end of the story. She proves herself, but it reveals her secret. And the Huns
popped out of the snow like daisies.
The next step is spiritual aridity, when the heroine's success is short-lived and she has to rethink her earlier choices. Ping is revealed to be Mulan, and her prowess in the last battle only keeps her from being killed by her superior officer.
A life for a life. My debt is repaid.
She's not allowed to stay with them. So we get this scene.
So when I looked in the mirror, I'd see someone worthwhile. I see nothing.
And Mushu and Cricky confess that they've also been faking it all along. This is Mulan's lowest point, and is going to take a call to action to get her out of it.
I have to do something.
The sixth step is the descent, where the heroine reaffirms who she is. Mulan's is fairly short. I would say it was started by Mushu's confession. And then this happens. And she realizes that, woman or not, she has to ensure the safety of the Emperor, because that is who she is, the hero. So she rushes off to help.
Are we in this together or not?
Let's go kick some honey buns!
Our seventh step is where the heroine urgently yearns to reconnect to the feminine. And honestly, I'm not sure that this one happens in the movie. If it does, I think it is here.
You said you trust Ping. Why is Mulan any different?
She's accepting that she is Mulan, but insisting, correctly of course, that it shouldn't matter what name she has or what she wears. The Ping Shangnu is right here, ready to save the day.
Keep your eyes open. I know they're here.
The eighth step is to heal the mother-daughter split. Obviously, Mulan does not reunite with her mother here, but she does heal the internal split with the feminine. It's more about that reaffirmation of who she is. So she returns to her most feminine garb, this time using that as a disguise, and uses what she figured out here to infiltrate the palace. What I really like about this is that the whole climax of the movie is showing how Mulan is perfect the way she is, with both sides of herself. Dressing up as a bride wasn't the problem, it was the idea that her only use was breeding sons. Dressing as a soldier wasn't the solution to her problems. Being somewhere she could be valued for her natural strengths was. And remember, this did require her to break through the expectations for soldiers. They were going to send her home from the army during this montage. It wasn't until she started acting like herself instead of being a man that she was successful. Sort of implying that it's when she's trying to fit into a rigid role that she's not successful. And maybe she would have been at the beginning if she'd had a little more freedom to do what she does best. Improvise.
Hey, I'm making this up as I go.
The 9th step is to make peace with the masculine. Mulan does that personally here with Shang when he joins her, but it's also right here. Now she's making peace with masculine as a concept. She did leave her role in society to break into the army and lie to her friends, and now she is forgiven and valued for whom she really is.
You have saved us all.
The final step is integrating the masculine and the feminine to become a whole person. And as I said before, what I really love about this is basically the whole climax is showing how she's using the things she learned from both experiences in order to succeed.
It looks like you're out of ideas.
Not quite.
Overall, I think Mulan's journey is wonderful. Maybe one step is sort of missing, but the rest flow very well and are fully fleshed out. This could so easily have been a story that demonized either masculinity or femininity, with Mulan showing she was better than the men through girl power, or with Mulan implying that all feminine pursuits should be abandoned. But neither happen. Mulan, frankly, does not fit into the requirements for either role. She's kicked out of the tea house, she's kicked out of the army, but she has real strengths that are unrelated to her gender, and she knows the value of what she has experienced in both places. It's really fantastic and honestly really solid writing when it would have been so easy to celebrate or denigrate either side. Instead, it's clear that they are both needed. So let's explore that a little more through the music. Alright, to wrap these up, I do like to talk about some of the implications of the story. I'm not going to really get into Mulan as a Chinese princess. You can watch this wonderful video for everything you need to know about that. Instead, I'm going to talk about how the movie questions gender roles.
I know my place. It is time you learned yours.
First, though, allow me to set the stage. We are well past the 80s, where women had to wear shoulder pads to look like men so they could gain access to men's jobs. It's now the 90s, where everything is great, we have girl power, and no one will ever have to wear shoulder pads again. So a lot of historical fiction was produced in this decade, looking at the past with a sort of fond condescension. Wasn't it funny how other time periods were so restrictive of women? So glad that's not true anymore. And there were many stories told about women acting perhaps anachronistically in those time periods to reflect the current enlightened sentiment on women being able to do anything.
I couldn't care less what she'll wear or what she looks like.
It was around this time that corsets, a very normal and necessary fashion, were deemed evil, constricting requirements of women. And other societies' similar practices were spread around to sort of point and laugh at how things used to be. I bring this up because that is the context in which most Westerners heard about Chinese foot binding. I'm not going to get more into that historical practice, but I just want you to be aware that this is the framework from which most of the audience is going to approach this movie. That women in the past were oppressed, and that this is especially true of Chinese women.
No one will listen.
Hey, you're a girl again, remember?
We can see that in a lot of dialogue, in what role women have during the matchmaking scene, in the Girl Worth Fighting For song, even here with
Hero.
She's a woman. She'll never be worth anything.
I can't speak to the historical accuracy of that idea, but this is what leads Mulan to her inciting incident. She struggles to fit into the strict role of being a woman in this ancient society.
You are a disgrace!
And we as the audience are certainly going to be on her side. Lines like this are not something the 90s audience is going to buy as truth. Instead, they're going to think of how this encapsulates how oppressive this society is to women. And they're probably going to notice that the expectations are conflicting.
Tiny waist. Too skinny.
So, We are already skeptical of all of these traits being celebrated as peak feminine. Keep that in mind for later. And then the idea of her song is that she cannot be herself. She cannot be perfect, either as a bride or a daughter, indicating that those are her only options in life. And her father tells her to know her place when he loses his temper, unfortunately, and she refuses to do that, instead taking his place. This movie has two very gendered symbolic moments, and I'll get to the other one later. But here, we have her replace his conscription notice, a representation of all the binding aspects of being a man.
One man from every family must serve in the Imperial Army.
I will serve the Emperor in my father's place.
With her comb, which represents the binding aspects of being a woman.
Bring honor to us all.
Which they are both currently suffering under. So that's cool and sets up the main conflict, which is, of course, how will she survive in the man's world she's about to enter? But importantly, I think it gets at what the real lesson is here. That both gender roles are too constricting, and trading one for the other doesn't really solve anything.
She could be killed.
If I reveal her, she will be.
But before we get to the men's side of things, let's look at this other song. In it, the men describe things that they value in women, including this interesting comparison. And Mulan's suggestion is universally rejected.
How about a girl who's got a brain?
Nah. So this song provides us with some other expectations for women in this society, and the audience is likely going to find these just as restrictive and ridiculous as the earlier ones.
Who always speaks her mind?
We are going to take Mulan's side in this, so we like her suggestion, and maybe not everyone else's. One thing I find interesting about this song is that, yeah, the first verse has directives for what makes a good woman, but then it's mainly about how the men hope women will react to them. They may have ideas about what women should be like, but what they really want is for women to like them and appreciate their manliness. So, what makes them manly? Has a fairly clear picture on what it means to be a man. Shang lists a number of things that are, to him, the essential traits that a man must have. And just like the specifications for women, we as the audience should reject them. Our first hint is this line.
Did they send me daughters? And I asked for sons.
Because we are fully aware that, yeah, you were sent daughters. At least one anyway. But the chorus is what is really interesting. A man must be
swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire.
And importantly, mysterious as
the dark side of the moon.
Hey, remember that moon imagery to represent ladies? Well, Mulan is the most mysterious person here. She's in disguise for the majority of the film, after all.
Not a good idea. What if somebody sees you?
So, Mulan fits everything that Shang asks for, and importantly, also represents more than that. When he tells her to go home because she's
suited for the rage of war,
she proves him wrong. Not because she is rageful, she doesn't hulk her way up this pole, but because she's clever. Something that wins the day again and again as they face off with the Huns. Also, he says that they must
heed my every order
to survive, but she notably does not do that. She actively disobeys him and steals the cannon to cause her fellow soldiers to defy him as well. So she does more than just survive. She succeeds in a way they would not have otherwise. And importantly, Shang is not an antagonist because she disobeys him. Instead, he learns from her. His willingness to join her here is representative of how even the
tough guy
believes that there is value in breaking out of these restrictive gender roles.
She's a hero.
So, just like the songs about traits women are expected to have, the traits for men are something we should take with a grain of salt. Mulan has all of them, and she combines them with her feminine skills as well, which brings us to that other gendered symbolism moment. When Shan Yu is coming at her with a phallic symbol, assured she's out of ideas and cannot possibly stand against him, she uses a feminine tool to disarm him completely, the only person to do so. And one thing I really like is that he does not diminish her for being a woman.
The soldier from the mountains.
He sees her as the very real threat that she is. Sure, Mongolian culture is different from the Chinese culture at the time with respect to gender roles, but I especially enjoy when villains aren't misogynistic for no reason. Anyway, the other important thing about this song is that Shang doesn't really change his troops. They get more organized, but none of them are shown as having a significant change in character.
Come on, we gotta help!
My point is that not only is he wrong, because Mulan is a counterexample, but he is also constrained by his ideas about manhood, and they are only successful in rescuing the Emperor when his men give up those ideas to follow Mulan. There's a reason this song plays again here, after we haven't had a song since this moment. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also the point of the film. Both genders are being held back by sticking to the rigid expectations placed on them. And emphasizing a person's natural talents is better for everyone.
You have saved us all.
So because the audience assumes that the gender roles in this ancient society would be quite oppressive, the writers can navigate a story about cross-dressing without ruffling any feathers. Your mileage will vary on how you feel about the overall moral as applicable to your life, but most people will agree that is incorrect. My last video was also about a woman disguised as a man so she could go to war, and I actually think this movie does much more with that concept. Both ladies have a significant impact on the war their nation is facing, but Mulan as a film is willing to explore how having to disguise herself affects our heroine and the people around her. This guy is shown to be wrong about how he thinks about women. Shang and company learn to trust Mulan and to question the rigid demands of their society towards both genders. Mulan's father values her more than he does honor. Even Grandma gets in on it.
Woo! Sign me up for the next war.
And I think that Mulan employs the concept to the fullest, making it a very solid story.
The greatest gift and honor is having you for a daughter.
Gender politics are never an easy thing to present on screen because people tend to take things very personally. But one reason I always enjoy historical fiction is because it allows us to explore expectations placed on a person because of their gender in sort of a safe environment. In choosing to adapt a story where a woman cross-dresses as a man, there are a lot of pitfalls that the filmmakers were facing in terms of what kind of message to send. They could have made a statement about how women are obviously superior to men, or how all things feminine are terrible. Instead, they managed to tell a story where the men and women can learn from each other, and that bending or breaking some of those restrictive rules is great for everyone, which is really the best possible outcome for this movie to have.
Come on. Who did a good job? Come on, tell me who did a good job.
So finally, is Mulan a good role model? I mean, yeah, of course. But as I talked about in the first section, I think there are a lot of superficial reasons people might suggest, like breaking gender roles or being independent. But I think these miss the point of what makes her such a good role model. Mulan is a person trying to find a place where she can be herself, and she goes into two situations where she has to pretend to be someone else. A bride and then a soldier. And neither are fulfilling until she combines all the things that make her special to succeed against the real enemy. And she shows the people around her that, yeah, her gender role was too constricting, but theirs is as well. And learning to accept that there is more to value in a person than their ability to either bear sons or die for China
You'll die for honor.
is pretty important for all of our characters, especially the relatively gentle way it is done. No one who wants to do these things is shown as wrong, and femininity or masculinity are not demonized, just given the suggestion that saving China and being female are not mutually exclusive. And the same goes for being a good parent and being a man. So, even in the context of the film, she's a great role model. And outside of it, she teaches both little girls and little boys that they can do whatever they set out to do, and that they are more than just what society expects of them, which is a very good message for children, if you ask me.
Is she allowed to do that?
Now, I like to wrap up these episodes with a book recommendation. If you enjoy some Chinese historical fiction with maybe a little magic, I would suggest you check out Iron Widow by Shirin J. Zhao. It's really great. Thank you for listening to me talk about one of the best Disney princesses. Next time, we're talking about Calypso in the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, join my Patreon, buy me a coffee, all of those things so you don't miss it. See you then.